Hey, what's up, everybody? This is your host, Devin Hillsdon-Smith, and we are back with the 7th episode of Site Selectors Are People 2. Hope everybody is having a fantastic long weekend, transitioning into that wonderful time of the year that is summer. I'm looking forward. This is going to be the first summer that I get to spend with our new dog. I'm looking forward to getting out there and hiking again, getting my butt back in shape. I know we all say that, right? But I've been itching to get out there with him. If he would just stop pulling so much on his lead. We had to get him a gentle leader, which he looks miserable in. But anyways, so last episode, we kind of went into the tech side of, how technology is impacting our profession, right? With artificial intelligence, AI. We're going to swing back the other direction in this episode and actually respond to a listener question that came about a few episodes ago. And we're going to focus today on trust. Trust, probably the most human of aspects behind our profession. Building trust, maintaining trust, earning someone's trust, failing somebody and ruining trust. It is probably the most foundational element of interactions between human beings, right? Do you trust that other person? So let's go ahead and actually bridge last episode to this one. I'm going to type into Copilot, which is Windows AI with Windows 11. I think it's only on. We're going to ask Copilot, what is the meaning of trust? All right. So I typed that in. And again, while, actually this is moving a lot faster than I expected. So Copilot has bullet pointed this. Something I love about Copilot is it gives you its sources. But the meaning of trust, again, according to AI, based on how I asked the question, the meaning of trust encompasses several dimensions: confidence, dependability, integrity, safety, or it can be a legal arrangement, right? So where one party holds and manages property or assets for the benefit of another. Trust is foundational in personal relationships, business dealings, and legal structures, providing a basis for cooperation and interaction. Providing a basis for cooperation and interaction. I like that. It's built through consistent and reliable behavior over time. Well done. I actually like where AI went with that. And it's going to cover a few of the themes we're going to talk about today. Today, we're going to start off by defining trust overall, right? What is trust? We're then going to talk about how you build trust, generally speaking, how you ruin trust. And then the final part is going to bring it home to our profession. What is trust in economic development and site selection? How can you build trust between economic developers and site selectors, right? So we're going to start off with this first part, defining trust, which again, I think AI did a fantastic job at. My definition is trust is the belief in the reliability, honesty, and competence of someone or something. Plain and simple. Trust it's one of those concepts that's really hard to pin down, right? But it's more than just a word. It's a fundamental concept that underpins our interactions, our relationships, and really even our societal structures. You know, case in point, communities with higher institutional trust, so trust in government and business, in their leaders, experience stronger per capita real GDP growth because trust encourages investment, trade, collaboration. It's, like I said, it's an underpinning of society. So it's a huge deal, right? Trust involves relying on others, right? In the recipient's view, trust involves relying on others with confidence that they will act in our best interests. So when you trust somebody, you believe that they will consistently make decisions that align with your well-being, right? It's an assured reliance upon somebody. Trust is also the notion that, promises are kept, right? Trust is built by keeping our word, and consistently, right? This word consistently is going to come up a lot throughout this podcast. Consistency is key. It's repetition. It's proving something. It's earning trust. But trust is built by keeping our word and consistently following through on our commitments. It's not just about making promises, but also about fulfilling them reliably. It's very easy to make a promise. It's very difficult, right, to reliably and consistently fulfill promises. Trust is also built upon effective communication. So clear communication is essential for trust. When we communicate openly and honestly, we create a foundation. Effective communication ensures that our intentions align with what others perceive. And kind of the last point I'll make here about the definition of trust. What is trust? I mean, it goes back to consistency. It's about time. Trust takes time to develop. You have to start with small commitments and gradually build up to larger ones. Consistency in our actions reinforce trust. I'm sure you can point to a number of examples in your professional day-to-day, right? If you're an economic developer or site selector, where somebody let you down, right? Whether it be a member of your own team that made a promise, or somebody on the other side of the table made a promise that they were going to get you an offer, or they're going to get you, a shaped polygon by a certain time or a certain day, and then they miss it, right? And they come back with a legitimate excuse, and then another promise comes through, and they miss it, and another legitimate. Listen, we're all human, right? And you're going to fail. We're all going to fail from time to time, because my life feels like just a symphony of failures sometimes, right? But don't make excuses when you do. Own up to your failures, because even if you fail somebody, if you own up to it, that to some extent mitigates the negative impact that you've had potentially on your trust status with that person. So it's a very complicated term. It's a very human term, right? There's no way that you can say, if I build up 100 points, therefore somebody will trust me. There's a multitude of factors that go into it. And there is no calculation. There's no formula. It's about your interactions. It's about your trustworthiness. So part 2 of this podcast, and because we're kind of going all over the place, I'm going to kind of call out the different parts here to keep us organized. So part 1 was defining trust, right? It's the belief in the reliability, honesty, and competence of someone or something. That can be another person, it can be your government, it can be the company that you work for. It can be just about society in general around you. But that was part 1. How do you build trust when it's not linear and it's not as simple as 100 points equals trust, right? So let's explore some general tips on how you can build trust. First and foremost, be true to your word and follow through. Keeping promises and following through with your actions is crucial. When you make commitments, ensure you can fulfill them. Because again, here's our favorite word, consistency in keeping your word shows others what you expect from them, which will foster trust. Now, it's hard to be true to your word when your word maybe was misinterpreted, right? So another general tip is effective communication matters, right? Good communication is key. So what I always do, and I recommend to others, is you clearly express what you have committed to and what has been agreed upon. Because effective communication ensures that the message you intend to send aligns with what others receive. It's as simple as when you have a discussion about a task, right, or something you're going to do for somebody else, you just reiterate at the end of it to make sure everybody's on the same page and move it forward. You summarize, right? And by catching misunderstandings up front, you ensure that there's no snowball effect. So that on the back end, you're not sitting there pointing fingers and saying, well, you said you were going to, right? How many times? You said you were going to do this. No, I didn't. I said, and then it's too late. And so when you're starting off and trying to build trust with somebody new, right? Again, remember, trust takes time to build. Avoid expecting or offering too much too soon. Start with some small steps, right? Maybe in your onboarding at work, you make a promise that you're going to get all the documents the HR needs within the next hour. Do it, right? Start with small steps and gradually take on bigger commitments as trust grows. Because guess what? It's human nature for us to gossip, even though that's part of a way that you can ruin trust, right? But think about this. If you are the new guy at work and or gal at work, and you, in your first week, have established a pattern of saying, yep, I'm going to do this, and following through and doing it just like you said you were going to, and by the time that you said you were going to, people talk, right? And all of a sudden, hey, that new guy, he's not too bad, right? Yeah, I've enjoyed work with him so far. Trust can be contagious to an extent, but so can when you have a lack of trust in somebody. So remember, this is a marathon building trust. It's not something that you're going to establish with somebody day one, day two, week one, week two, month, year, right? Trust can take a long time, depending on the complexity of the relationship and the personalities involved. And that's why, just be consistent. There's our favorite word again. Be consistent. Consistent behavior reinforces trust. So when others observe that your actions align with your words, they further develop trust in you. So plain and simple, be reliable. Be reliable. Another way that you can establish trust is, again, this is back to the communication side of things, but transparency and vulnerability in your interactions and relationships with others. Openness and honesty are vital, right? Transparency builds trust by showing your authenticity. If you're open with somebody and you're not guarded, you're coming across, and you should be, more authentic. So when discussing challenges or mistakes, you can be willing to share openly and get to the root of the matter, right? If you can be vulnerable, that fosters stronger connections. That's because when you attempt to hide your mistakes, let's be real, people know that you're being dishonest. But by being open, you show your vulnerable side, and this helps build trust with other people. It's because they perceive you to be more like them, right? Everybody makes mistakes. If you pretend that you never make mistakes, you're going to make it difficult for others to trust you because you've created an unnecessary difference between the two of you. When all that a person sees is the perfection you project, they likely won't have an easier time trusting you, which seems at odds, right? That seems counterintuitive. That when all that a person sees is perfection, they likely won't trust you. Well, it's because they know that there's got to be something wrong, because they make mistakes. Surely you do as well. So if the only thing they're seeing is you attempting to prove that you don't make mistakes and that you're perfect, trust starts to be eroded, right? Where are they not telling me the truth? Because there's no way this guy is always perfect. And so the flip side is you need to have empathy and understanding in your interactions. Understand others' perspectives, what they're going through. Show some empathy, right? Trust is strengthened when people feel heard and valued. So as they always say, put yourself in their shoes. Consider their feelings. And then, just think through it, right? You've made a mistake. You have to go and tell somebody you made a mistake or you're not going to hit your deadline, right? If their response is empathetic and from a place of understanding, you're going to feel more comfortable being more candid and honest with them in the future when you make a mistake. Guess what? Because you start to trust them a little bit. And it comes down to a final tip, right? Which has been woven throughout all this. take responsibility for your actions. Have some accountability, right? Learn from your mistakes. Owning up to your mistakes and showing a true commitment to improve enhances trust. Refusing accountability undermines trust. And we've all been there, right? You're running, you made a mistake, you get caught last second and you don't know how to respond. Your tongue is tied, and the easiest thing you can do is say your dog ate your homework. I'm very sorry. I would never have done this to you, right? This was outside of my control. It's human. It's going to happen. But the more we can take accountability, take a step back, take a breath. Hey, Jonathan, so here's the deal. All right, I know I said that I was going to have this project to you by close of business today. I've had a few things come up on my end, but I'm not making excuses. I'm just giving you an explanation because you deserve that. I'm going to need at least until close of business tomorrow. Okay. Jonathan heard you say, I know that I'm not living up to my promise. I had some legitimate issues arise, but I'm not making excuses. I'm just letting you know because you deserve to know that something popped up and derailed me. And then Jonathan knows, okay, he said he's going to have it to me tomorrow by close of business, right? You've reset the expectations. Don't miss that deadline, or otherwise Jonathan's going to see a pattern. So that's how you build trust. On the flip side here, and then we'll go to break, part 3 is ruining trust, right? What are some behaviors that destroy trust between people? So first and foremost, lying. Dishonesty undermines trust more than anything else. Whether it's a small white lie, dog ate my homework, or a significant deception. Lying erodes the foundation of trust. Notice that I said in there, whether it's a small white lie or a significant deception. Yeah, I think all of our grandmothers have told us it's okay to tell a small white lie every once in a while, right? At least mine did, and hey, if nobody else's did, then sorry, Grandma. Small white lies, though, build up, right? Death by a thousand cuts. They build up, and they become tiresome at some point. So dishonesty undermines trust more than anything else. Another behavior that destroys trust is breaking promises, right? So when you failed to follow through with Jonathan on your deliverable by close of business today, failing to follow through on commitments damages trust. When promises especially are consistently broken, people become wary. And again, back to the whole water cooler, right? Conversations around the water cooler. You know, hey, this dude's been great to work with. I really like work, right? Yeah, he's been doing what he said he was going to do, right? Gossiping, even though it can help spread and enhance your trust by way of just secondhand discussions. If you engage in gossiping, talking behind someone's back, that will damage trust with that person within both personal and professional settings. So avoid spreading rumors or negative information because it's going to get back to that person, right? And guess what? Even if it doesn't, if you tell me something, if you gossip to me about something, one of the first things I'm going to wonder is, wait a second, would so-and-so also talk behind my back? And then I'm going to get a little guarded for a while I try to reassess the situation and figure out what's going on. This next one's quite relevant for, I'm going to make sure to touch on it when we get into the trust and economic development site selection part after the break. But another behavior that destroys trust is manipulation. Trying to control or deceive others, right? Manipulative behavior erodes confidence in your intentions. And I said that this is relevant for what we do because negotiations always have a level of manipulation in them, right? You're not trying to show your hand right away as to how much in incentives you really are authorized to offer. You're not willing to show your hand right away when it comes to, yeah, you're actually the number one community and we just have others as backups, right? You have to play the game, and there's a bit of manipulation involved in that. So I'm going to coin something here, which I think, there's I'm going to coin a term here, maybe ethical manipulation versus unethical or unnecessary manipulation. It comes down to the intent, right? When you're in a situation where manipulation is part of the game that you have to play, so a negotiation, there's a level of manipulation that's expected, right, for you to represent your client's best interests. You don't want to start with your highest offer. You just don't, right? And so you're going to start with a lower offer and give all these reasons why, and you're trying to manipulate them into understanding your position and hopefully coming in somewhere close to what you've offered. But if in the manipulation side of things, if that crosses over into deceitfulness, right? Attempting to, with untoward actions, influence the outcome in a way that's not customary, maybe that's frowned upon, right? This is hard to define, but there's a line that you cross with manipulation. One part of it is just playing the game. It's negotiations. The other part is when it crosses, maybe that's the distinction. Negotiations, interactions, right? Whatever's normal and customary and accepted in that setting. As soon as you go above that and your intentions maybe become negative or looking for a win-lose situation, right? There's a line that you cross where it becomes manipulation, where you're trying to control, especially if you're trying to deceive others, right? It's not, deception would be more so along the lines of, I can't go beyond this number. That's absolutely the most I can do, right? Pushing too hard. And then you find out at the end of the day that, yeah, they were deceiving you. They could have gone much higher, but they were just trying to dig their heels in. And instead of telling you this is the highest that we'll go, they were trying to make it seem like this is a deal killer when it never was. Has that crossed the line? Always be aware of it, right? That you can cross the line into manipulation. And then we're going to go back to another behavior that destroys trust. And this is the inverse of the final, behavior that can encourage trust. Refusing accountability, not owning up to your mistakes undermines trust. So when you avoid responsibility, trust dissipates. Plain and simple. All right, I think we've covered this general section of these first three parts pretty well. There's so many different ways we could have gotten into. I mean, I could just feel myself with that manipulation discussion. We can get really deep into some of these, but I want to spend some time next after the break talking about the specific application or existence of trust in economic development and site selection, because that's what we're here to talk about, folks. See you after the break. All right, and we're back. So now we're going to talk about trust in the context of economic development and site selection. We're going to start off by talking about the importance of trust for site selectors. We're going to move on to the importance of trust for economic developers. Then we're going to explore the importance of trust in the interactions between economic developers and site selectors. And we'll call it a wrap. I'm going to try to keep this episode a little bit shorter this time since the last one went over. And if you can't tell, my voice keeps cracking. I feel like I'm about to lose it or something. So let's get through this before that happens. All right. So the importance of trust for site selectors. Site selectors, right? Our main audience. We've got a few different types of audiences, right? But the number one group would be our clients, right? They're the ones that are paying us to do what we do. We have fiduciary duties to our clients, right? That's number one. And that's where, as a site selector, you have to make sure that you have your clients' trust. And that is very hard to do because typically you're hired in and then the project just, all right, it's go time. And you've tried to build some sort of, semblance of trust, or at least a good foundation for it in your proposals and your pitches as you're getting to know each other. You would then assume, if you were chosen to be that client's site selector, that they feel as though there's some level of trust that they can place in you. But you have to very quickly, as you're off to the races, build trust at the same time. You're trying to build the ship as you're flying it. And that's difficult because you're digging in very quickly into a lot of detailed and complicated information. You're finally being given insights and a look into the inner workings of the client's business. But trust strengthens the firm's position as a trusted business advisor. So when clients trust their site selection consultants, they become more than just service providers. They become trusted advisors. And this elevated status allows for deeper collaboration and deeper strategic decision-making. It's always very difficult as a consultant the first time you have to tell your client you think they're wrong. And if you don't have some level of trust already established, that would rub anybody the wrong way, right? You tell your consultant, these are some facts about our business and about where we're potentially looking to go. And the consultant comes back and says, I hear you, but I don't think you're approaching this the proper way. And you're wrong. We're going to do it this way. You would immediately be taken aback, right? And so how do you, as a consultant, earn trust while you're in a position where you are likely needing to tell your client that they're wrong about something? And that happens over and over and over again. Consultants are not paid to be yes men, yes women, right? They're not just there to make the client feel good. They're there to bring their expertise and experience to the table to make sure that the end decision is the right decision. And so I've had situations where we just weren't able to establish a level of trust between us and a client. And you know what? We all had to agree to walk away. It wasn't the right relationship. If I don't have my client's trust implicitly, at least by the time we get into the thick of it, then I have a very hard time doing my job. And that's why I said earlier that the elevated status of a trusted advisor, more than a mere service provider, allows for deeper collaboration and strategic decision-making. Having that trust also reduces the focus on price between a site selector and their client. Clients who trust their site selectors are less likely to prioritize cost as the sole factor. Instead, they're able to understand that they're getting what they're paying for, right? They value the expertise and the guidance provided by their trusted advisors, because trust enhances client loyalty. Trust fosters loyalty. Clients who trust their site selectors are less likely to entertain approaches from competitors. They stick with what works and value the established relationship. And so that first project is always going to be a little bit clunky, right? That's almost your test case, which even though it's a real world test case, but you're trying to figure each other out. And then if you've done a good job and you've built that trust and that rapport between the two parties, then the next project, you're going to start off on a better foundation, right? And so then you can move it forward a little more efficiently and it'll be that much better. And then the third and then the fourth. Trust, plain and simple, it boosts client retention and profitability. It leads to long-term relationships. Clients who trust their site selectors are more likely to stay, renew contracts, continue to working together, and it overall contributes to profitability and the value of the firm. Plain and simple. Now, this is all about trust in the context of the site selector and the site selector client relationship. Don't forget, and we'll get into this when we get down into the third section here, but site selectors also have to earn the trust of economic developers, right? There's the amount of times that you would go through a project with a site selector when I was an economic developer, and you would never hear from them, right? Here's that common theme again. You never heard from them again. Or you find out that maybe the project wasn't real. It was more like a feasibility study, or you were a stalking horse, right? Those site selectors, certain site selectors, started to develop a reputation with me. And when I saw their RFIs come in, I didn't fully trust that they were real enough or worthy enough for me to put my blood, sweat, and tears into as an economic developer. That happened. That's human nature, right? Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. So site selectors, and it comes down to that open communication, the transparency, right? If you don't engage in those behaviors, then you're probably going to see the responses coming from various economic development teams. You're probably going to see those responses getting less and less serious. And if economic developers and communities that are hot markets don't trust you, then you deliver below average work product for your client, which then causes them to trust you less. And you can see where I'm going with this. It snowballs and becomes an issue. So what about the importance of trust for economic developers? Well, first of all, let's start the inverse order of what we did on the first one. An economic developer needs to be a community representative whom a site selector can trust. Right? If you have a fantastic reputation, you always come through, you always follow through with your word, you deliver on time. If in negotiations you're fair and you're transparent, and right, you've done everything we've talked about as far as building trust with a site selector. Me as a site selector, I'm going to find ways to work with you if the community and the market makes sense for my client, because I know that it's going to lead to better data. It's going to lead to better decision making. And I also will probably find you more of a pleasure to work with than somebody who I consistently have to determine whether or not what they're telling me is BS or not. Right? I've said on a prior episode that economic developer Devin would be site selector Devin's worst nightmare. And on that front, even though I like I said before, I was always as transparent as possible, I had a bit of the showmanship and the sales gaming, right? That I thought that's how I thought the process was supposed to go. Now, thankfully, my reputation, I think, please feel free to let me know if I'm wrong, but my reputation was intact because I probably approached it in a very meaningful way. But as an economic developer, you are one amongst thousands of communities that are competing for these projects, right? And you don't want to be known as one of those communities that is hard to work with and hard to trust. But your number one audience as an economic developer, it's not site selectors. It's your community. It's the community that you are hired to serve. And this is a difficult topic because economic developers operate within this, at times, the secretive world of RFIs and confidential community company negotiations. And 99% of the time, the first time that the public is going to hear about a new company that's going to break ground or cut a ribbon and create new jobs and do new things in their city is when the decision's already been made, right? There's not a lot of opportunity for public input, direct public input, when it comes to landing new economic development projects. And so it's up to your performance, really, as an economic developer to establish trust. If every time you announce a new business coming to town or an existing business is expanding, if you've made sure that those are the right projects for your community, then you should have a pretty solid track record where the community at large trusts that your office is doing the right thing. If you consistently bring in the wrong types of projects or projects that are gobbling up land that should go to something else, right? Putting a factory right next door to a high-end subdivision or citing a huge office park, on a road that is simply a 2-lane county road with really no traffic and it's really rural in nature and everybody out there loves kind of the way things are, and all of a sudden, boom, you announce that you're bringing in this 1,000 person office headquarters that's going to congest traffic, and it's going to change what that area of the community has always been and what the folks want, they're not going to trust that you're going to make the right decision moving forward. And so it requires that you listen to the community. You have your thumb on the heartbeat of your community, right? Because you can make decisions based on your understanding of the community. You're at that point, this is why you're hired to represent the community. You're hired to represent the community's best interests. And so you need to know your community inside and out. Knowledge and an intimate understanding of the city, town, county, what have you, that you were hired to serve. Knowledge is what's going to be the greatest opportunity to build trust. You're operating as a member of the community, not just somebody who's been hired to turn cornfields into factories. So trust fuels economic development, while a lack of trust will slow down. Trust me, I've seen it before. Projects announced, community goes, what in the heck are you thinking? Big uproar, and the project either dies or slows to the point where it should have died. When communities trust their economic developers, they're more likely to actively participate in a positive manner in development initiatives, collaborate, and invest in local projects. You're a leader in your community. Economic developers who have the trust of their communities can more effectively attract businesses, create jobs, and enhance overall prosperity. Plain and simple. And so even though you can't have open dialogues, project-specific open dialogues, you should still, as an economic developer, have open dialogues with your community. Economic development professionals can build trust by engaging with the community through participatory decision-making, right? Planning efforts. You can actively involve community members in shaping zoning and land use, development, master development plans. You can help to address cultural barriers, consider social dynamics. Economic developers can foster trust and ensure that development initiatives align with community needs and aspirations. Simple as that. You are, as an economic developer, required to listen to and understand your community. You are then to listen to and understand a project's needs, impacts, or requirements. It is then up to you to be trusted by both sides to make the right decision. Do we go after this project? How hard do we go after this project? Is this right for us, and is this right for the company? It is a difficult position to be in, folks. And this is why I can continue to say economic developers are the true heroes of this profession, because they are in between the community and a potential new project employer, right? And if it's a factory that has emissions, right? Is it the right type of community for that? You need to make sure your community trusts that what you're doing is for the overall well-being of that specific community. It comes down to information gathering, understanding, listening. It enhances your role as a leader servant for that community. So economic developers staying abreast of issues and community sentiment, right? There's a whole host of strategic initiatives that you can go through to make sure that you're operating appropriately on behalf of your community. But let's talk about the importance of trust between economic developers and site selectors, right? As you're working through projects. Trust serves as the bedrock for collaboration. When economic developers and site selectors trust each other, they can work together effectively to achieve common goals. So whether it's attracting new businesses, expanding existing ones, or promoting economic growth, trust ensures a seamless partnership. The ability to work together collaboratively between economic developers and site selectors, as I mentioned before, can very likely be the difference between a successful project and a failed project. Right? The more you can collaborate throughout the negotiations, the more information the economic developer has to make sure it's the right fit for the community, and that they're able to participate with incentives in a meaningful manner that doesn't go beyond what community sentiment would call for. It also allows for the site selector to determine, is this the right fit for my client? Right? Are they going to be able to follow through so that my client can be up and running when they need to be up and running, and it'll cost them what they thought it was going to cost them over 10, 20 years? And so the relationship between economic developer and site selector is really one in which effective collaboration that's the name of the game. We are the representatives for our two sides. We're there to represent each of our sides' respective interests in negotiations. And we also have to know when to walk away. But if you trust each other and you can collaborate a little bit more effectively, that's why it's the bedrock of doing what we do. That comes primarily through transparency and information sharing, right? So economic developers provide crucial data and insights to site selectors. And this information helps us evaluate whether a community is a suitable fit for our client's investment. Trust between the two parties enables open communication and transparent sharing of relevant details. And that's critical because site selectors rely on accurate, up-to-date information about infrastructure, workforce availability, incentives, quality of life. And trust ensures that economic developers provide reliable data without bias or hidden agendas. It doesn't ensure it, but it sure helps, doesn't it? And that then means that the economic developer and the site selector can navigate those challenges together. Economic development involves overcoming obstacles, regulatory obstacles, logistical, financial. Trust allows economic developers and site selectors to tackle these challenges collaboratively. And so when we're faced with unexpected issues, such as permitting delays or gaps in infrastructure funding, a foundation of trust ensures that both parties work together to find solutions. Trust fosters resilience and adaptability in negotiations, right? If you trust the other person on the other side of the table and everybody's working together to make this deal happen, you're going to have a much easier chance getting there than if you consistently hide your cards. And back to the site selector side, right? Trust is also critical for risk mitigation. Site selectors make critical decisions on behalf of their clients. Critical decisions. They need confidence that the information provided by economic developers is accurate and unbiased. Trust minimizes the risk of making uninformed decisions. So when site selectors trust economic developers, they can confidently recommend a location to their clients, knowing that due diligence has been done. And so here's what it comes down to, right? Economic development is not a one-time transaction. It's an ongoing process. Trust paves the way for lasting relationships. So as site selectors revisit communities for different projects, their trust in economic developers grows. They appreciate consistency, reliability, and a commitment to mutual success. And that's what it's about, right? It's, like I said before, it's about running the marathon, not the sprint. You want to make sure that at the end of the day, the site selectors that you've interacted with, that they're going to continue to come back. Site selectors, you want to make sure that the economic developers recognize your projects as being legitimate, you being fair in your dealings, a pleasure to work with, easy to work with to an extent. But here's 3 things that I learned as an economic developer that are vital when engaging with site selectors on the topic of trust. First of all is establish a main point of contact. Clear communication is vital when engaging with site selectors, especially when you have the state involved, the locals involved, the developer involved, the utility companies involved, the workforce development board involved, the regional chamber involved, right? That's a lot of cooks in the kitchen. But because clear communication is vital, have a dedicated point of contact, a real person the site selector can rely on. It makes a difference, right? Even down to the little things like personalize your communication by providing a name and a photo for this point person. When site selectors know they can turn to you for information, trust grows. Human connections matter, especially and despite us being in an era of AI and chatbots. So you can leverage industry-related events to meet site selectors in person, proactively reach out to establish that initial connection. Once they know you, they'll be more willing to engage, learn about your community, and take it from there. The second tip as an economic developer is to build a reliable team. You need to collaborate with local and regional partners. When site selectors see that you and your partners share a vision and work together, they gain confidence in your community. You need to highlight your strong foundation and ample resources to optimize their client's project. So if you communicate clearly with local companies, higher education institutions, utilities, state-level economic development organizations, ensure everyone is informed about each other's value propositions, programs, accomplishments, trust is reinforced when collaboration is impactful. And not only will strong collaboration lead to site selectors trusting you more, but it'll also ensure that your team, your partners, trust you more. And the third tip here, and this is a simple one, but an important one. Tell your authentic story. Site selectors have heard countless community stories. However, the most memorable ones that I've found are raw and authentic. I want to hear real life experiences from locals, not scripted commercials, right? One of the ways that I get to know a community is when I get there, I will take the cheapest Uber I can find, right? And I will engage in conversation with that driver. Why are you in the community? If you're not from here, why did you move here? Right? Why haven't you left? What do you enjoy about the community? I'm talking to an everyday person, not somebody who knows who I am and is trying to script every moment of my interaction in their community. I will then take the most expensive Uber I can find, unless it's really expensive, in which case the next most expensive, and I'll ask the same questions. See how they interact, how they respond. It's about having that authentic story. Because you need to share stories that resonate. Why an international company chose your community. What challenges were overcome. What's the community spirit? Authenticity builds trust and leaves a lasting impression. So we're going to end it there. I hope this gave us all something to think about here. I know as I was going through it, it did. There are areas where I can definitely do better in my life to garner trust, to earn trust. But again, don't forget, this is a complicated topic, gaining trust in general. And when you apply it to a complex industry like site selection and economic development, it becomes even more difficult, right? When you've got negotiations that are full of potential lines that cross into manipulations, when you've got the difference between fact-finding and sales. It's something we all can work on daily. I know I am. It's difficult, but I owe it to you because I expect that you owe it to me. And the better my relationship with you can be, the better the overall outcomes will be for your community and for my client. So, hope you've enjoyed this episode exploring the concept of trust, why trust matters, and why trust matters in economic development and site selection. And one last thing before we wrap, just want to let you know that I started this in the last episode. I'm going to do it for this one and moving forward. If you check the podcast episode description, I'm going to start throwing down some links to articles and resources that are relevant to the topic, just in case you have an inkling to explore the concept or topic further. So, this is Devin Hillsdon-Smith. It's been a pleasure as always. And, well, you know it. Site selectors are people too. See ya. Just a heads up, views expressed in this podcast are solely my own and are not attributable to any employers, whether past or present. Thank you.